Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review of The Expanse Season 3 on Amazon. And I can see why people think that this is like one of the best seasons of The Expanse, because a lot of stuff happens, and it's a lot of good things that happen, and it really gets things moving forward. Now, I think this one had a better kind of end point at the end of the season because you still technically got the holdovers of what was happening last season for the first couple episodes, about almost like half of them, because there was like 13 episodes in this one versus like usually 10 going in some other like for other ones and 13 for like season 2. But this, I think, was split a little bit more evenly episode wise of how the stories kind of panned out. So the thing is, a lot of things happen in like the first part and the second part, but I think that the last part did a better job of kind of like ending that story, so that way it could transition to the kind of next part of what's going on. So we had ended the last season with them trying to figure out what was going on with Ganymede and the bombshell information that Naomi had given the proto-molecule to Fred Johnson and the OPA. And we see some of the fallout with that of Fred Johnson then teaming up with Anderson Dawes because he's got the proto-molecule but he doesn't know how to use it. And Dawes, of course, has a scientist dude who would know what to do with it. So they kind of like pair up. Fred Johnson decides to task Drummer with getting the Nauvoo back, so that way it could be a kind of flagship for the OPA Nation. Drummer, of course, is kind of pissed off that Fred Johnson is working with Anderson Dawes because she pretty much understands that Anderson Dawes is someone who's in power only for himself. You know, she sees that shit from a mile away. But granted, Fred Johnson has something that Dawes needs, and Dawes has something that he needs, so that way they can have this proto-molecule be more of the weapon that they kind of need. Which, by the end of this season, isn't exactly what it appears to be. So, that is pretty much all that we kind of get with the OPA front in the first half of this season with what's kind of getting out. I mean, we get Drummer going, getting the Nauvoo, mucking around with it, and coming back and doing all that. But that's kind of minimalist compared to the giant war that is going on with Earth and Mars. Because Ehrenreich, of course, doing the whole touch-off of trying to paint Abasarala as the one that has been doing the dirty dealings behind the scene, and of course murdering a Martian defense minister, but making it look like he didn't murder him, has decided to push pretty much all-out war between Earth and Mars. However, since he's the undersecretary, he pretty much uses his wells to get the actual secretary Esteban to make the kind of decisions. And the thing is, Esteban is the worst kind of leader to have in this situation because Ehrenreich calls it at a certain point that he pretty much just echoes whatever the last person tells him. It's not to an extreme of like you could see him eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and then somebody's like, oh god, you hate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and he would drop it like it. No, it's not to that kind of extent where he's like mentally deficient, but he really is that kind of weak will of a leader of like he will be told by one person to do something and then flip it in the next, because we see Ehrenreich ordering a UN vessel to continue to go after Abasarala and then try and get Esteban to and pretty much initiate a preemptive first strike on Mars's capabilities on an orbital weapons platform. And of course, another character, Reverend Anna Badolodov? Reverend Anna. It's a weird kind of last name, but I think that's what it was like. It was Badolodov. But she was pretty much with him in kind of the early days with his protest movements and stuff like that, and she very much anti-war. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of agree with you, lady. And she's like, listen, try and de-escalate the situation and make sure that as little lives are lost as possible. That's pretty much what anyone should do. But the thing is, since he waffled and gets pretty much pulled back into Ehrenreit's thing, the orbital platforms that the UN had been charged up and ready to go, because he's like, okay, give me a good enough kind of percentage and we'll see. And he was able to pinpoint where the Martian platforms were, and he's like, they're spun up and ready. And he's like, nah, I'm not going to do it. But then he pretty much gets flipped on a dime by Ehrenreit, and he's like, fine, do it. And he does it, but of course the consequence of this is one of Martian's platforms are able to launch off, I think it was like a nuke or whatnot, and it kills like 2 million people in South America. And she's just like, what the fuck are you doing? Well, that situation is then unfolding on the Earth and Mars front. We see Avasarala, Bobby, and Kotyar are dealing with, oh shit, we're on Mount Ship, but we gotta get out of here because we got a UN battle cruiser pretty much trying to like push our shit in. So they have to deal with this whole situation of how most of the kind of systems are locked out, and they have this one kind of like engineering dude, Theo, that's trying to help them out. They are able to get Ehrenreit's message. That's an important thing. He normally would have needed like hours to get through it, but he was able to get the message that Ehrenreit said, pretty much being like, I am the asshole kind of thing. Now granted, that's kind of rare to happen in real life, but sometimes there are people who, when they think they are in the top dog position, will essentially gloat that way. And to be fair, Ehrenreit pretty much had every reason to think that nobody's getting out of this shit alive on this ship, and they ain't gonna have that recording. So they pretty much give the recording to Avasarala and Bobby. Bobby is able to do a crazy ass thing to get to the Razorback, Julie's ship. And that was a nice callback. I was like, holy shit, this is Julie's ship. And it's interesting to kind of see that be used in what they're kind of doing and going through. So they're able to escape on that. Kotyar and Theo escape on the kind of drop ship that Avasarala came on. And of course, Kotyar's wounded and shit. But they're pretty much trying to make it so that way they can get out of there. On this then intersects with the Rocinante's crew, in that the crew now understands what Naomi did, and there's complete friction between her and the rest of the crew. And we do get some nice kind of things, like Alex is like, why didn't we give it to Mars? You know what I mean? I wanted to do that, but no, we decided together to put that into the sun, and then you went behind our backs. And Amos is like, well, then I don't have a problem. It's just, you're not the person I thought you were. Holden, of course, we do get to a nice moment where he's like, listen, even though I don't agree with what you did, I understand. I can't hate you for doing what you thought was right. And it was a very nice adult kind of nuanced way of like, yeah, you did something kind of shitty and you broke your trust in us, like our trust in you, but I can't hate you for doing that because you thought you were doing the right thing. It's not like she went out and fucking started cracking babies open and sucking the marrow out, going, rah. Not that kind of like complete crazy, like, what the fuck kind of thing. Now granted, I'm still like alright, that's kind of screwy. So Holden is trying to stay out of stuff now, and apologizes to Prax and be like, listen, at first I didn't give a fuck about your kid. I kind of used it as an excuse. Now I want to help you find your kid. This, of course, syncs up because they're about to go on their way to deal with what's going on Io, because they cleaned the ship after the whole hybrid incident, but they didn't get all of the proto-molecule. There's one stuck in one, like, little-ass corner. It's like, yep. But it's, like, a place that they literally would have had to fucking dig in to get to it. So it's not like, oh, the plot demanded that this little bit be right here. It's like, no, I can understand why that fucking thing was there. And they had gotten kind of a proto-molecule shot from another of the moons of Jupiter, Io. And as they're about to kind of do that, they get a Martian distress signal because Bobby is popping that off, and the Razorback being like, "We need help!" Because she cannot accelerate to a point to get away from the UN ship without pretty much killing Avasarala and thereby negating why they would have to escape from the ship. Now, granted, if Bobby was a self-serving asshole and been like, "I'm gonna get out of this shit," she could have done that, but she's not like that because, well, duty is drilled into her. And since the Martians kind of fucked her over and Avasarala really hasn't at this point, she's like, "I'm gonna help this old lady out." And of course, the Rosi comes in and does some banging ass shit to pretty much mess with their sensors and take out the engines of the UN ship and are able to pretty much tug the Razorback with them. Of course, Avasarala is kind of unconscious at the beginning, but gets in, and we get some cool character interactions because Amos is pretty much teaching her how to wear mag boots on the ship and everything, telling her to walk like they're pumps. It's just like, how do you know that? It's like, I've had a life, I've done shit. And it's just like, I kind of really would like to see more conversations between Amos and Avasarala. But, of course, she's trying to pretty much get Holden to help stop this war, where Holden is trying to stay out as much as possible. He thinks that every time he tries to make something better, he keeps making it worse. And granted, I do not disagree with him coming to that assessment because he just keeps getting into shit after shit after shit, and it would follow that he's like, every time he tries to make something better, things start spiraling more and more out of control. He kills the doctors to try and stop the spread of the proto-molecule. That leads to Miller having to pretty much handle a nuke and go into the center of Eros to try and stop that whole shit. Him trying to help out on Ganymede has done all this kind of stuff with a hybrid, and now they're like screwballing. They had the whole stuff with the proto-molecule, and it's just spiraling out of control. Every time he tries to stop this war and stuff, it keeps getting worse. So at first, he's very reticent of trying to help Avasarala. He just wants to do this one thing of saving this girl and helping Prax. He kind of tries to get his focus down completely to this one kind of objective and tries to stop being the kind of Don Quixote night tilting at windmills kind of thing. But Avasarala is able to be like, listen, you shouldn't stop doing that. Sometimes those people are fools. But sometimes those kind of people are needed to do the good things that kind of help out the rest of the people. And of course, she also wants the proto-molecule for Earth. Naomi is pretty much like saying, I ain't gonna let the Earth get the proto-molecule. I'm like, okay, so it's... I just love how you see these different factions and you understand, like, the Belters have been shit on. I understand that. But it really plays into the whole thing of you have to watch out what you fight and how things happen. If you're not careful, the people that have been oppressed turn into the oppressor and be like, hey, fuck you, Earth. You don't need this shit. I got it, so that way you don't do shit with me. And then you essentially start becoming that thing which you wanted to fight and what you hated and start doing the same things. It's like, you're essentially kind of just doing the same kind of thing. And I'm like, alright, we'll kind of have to see how that goes. But they are able to kind of get everything kind of worked out. They wanted to get pretty much a message. So Holden sends this message to Anna that has the whole Ehrenreich thing, and they also get to a point where they need fuel to pretty much make sure everything's topped off. They find like a wrecked Martian warship, take in like 3 of the survivors. They're like, screw this! Now granted, they didn't at first go completely utterly nutso on it, but they're like, we recognize this shit. You're pretty much scavenging off the dead, and it's like, they're... I understand treating the dead with respect, but they're in a war zone, they need fuel, and that ship is not going to be using that fuel. And they are not the typical kind of pirates, because guess what? They would have fucking left you to die. You know? And And then, of course, Alex is trying to, like, get them onto their side, but they're like, fuck this shit, we're taking this ship, you motherfucker, so we can go in and continue this war shit. And Alex and Naomi pretty much get taken, and then Bobby's able to kind of talk him down. Holden tried to get in contact with Amos, but they were kind of, like, getting APC rounds and all that kind of shit. We got a nice Amos and Prax kind of thing. I really like Amos and Prax as they kind of bond and develop their kind of friendship, because Prax isn't that used to doing stuff in space. I mean, at one point he almost gets killed by flying stuff because they didn't lock down a thing properly, and Amos admonishes him for it, but he's not an asshole about it. It's really kind of weird because in the beginning of this show, I was like, Amos can be kind of an asshole, but as they get deeper into it, I'm like, no, that's just his bluntness, and he's not trying to be an asshole. He's like, if I don't tell you this thing, something's going to go weird. So Holden tried to pretty much get in contact with him. He's like, I kind of need help. He's like, he pops in. He's like, oh, shit, did I miss it? As they've gotten everything down. They also give the message to this ensign dude who pretty much passes it on to the captain of the ship that they get to. Then we see that everything kind of starts converging on Io. We see that Aaron Wright pretty much has to deal with the fallout because Anna's able to give the information to Esteban. Esteban then pretty much pushes the dead onto Aaron Wright and the whole kind of war thing. And timeline, it might not... Timelines kind of work out a little bit more fuzzy because they're still trying to figure out what's going on. They don't have the complete ceasefire thing going on with the Martians at the moment, but they get to Io. The Rossi's got to do some crazy-ass maneuvering to kind of get there and figure out what's going on. Of course, Avasarala's plan with getting the message to the Martians was to get them to forward it to Souther, who is on the Agatha King, but yet he doesn't get the information and doesn't get Kochiar. Kochiar kills Theo because he's like, I can't have you fucking up our story, and it sucks, but I understand why he did it. I really love the refreshing take of, I can disagree with what a character does, but I understand why they did it. Not just the plot demands that this motherfucker kills this motherfucker. This dude doesn't like killing this man, but he needs to do it to make sure that him saying that Avasarala is dead is more believable. And we see that Souther is pretty much trying to detail what's going on here. It's like, what the hell's going on with Avasarala here? And of course, his ship gets commandeered by Admiral Negan, and he's like, fuck this shit, I'm in control, get us to Io, because he wants the weapons from Mao, which are the hybrids and all that. Let's see here. So then we pretty much got our UN and Martian forces converging on Io. We've also got the Rossi trying to get in there with the Razorback and all that. Okay, so before we get to this, we got to go back a little bit, and we see that Mao and Strickland have been dealing with what's going on here. Mao pretty much gets introduced to Prax's daughter, May, and of course, May reminds him of Julie and like his own kids, and he's like, you know what, we should stop this because nothing's really kind of coming from this kind of experimentation on these kids. And you're like, oh, he's pretty much getting his kind of conscious moment, his kind of come to Jesus kind of place. However, that doesn't really turn out to be the case, because we see that shit's going on Venus, and nobody knows exactly what's going on. That kind of more goes on in the background, because that hops up into the second part of the season. But they see that the genetic kind of problems that these kids have help to inhibit the protomolecule, so that way they can kind of better control it, even though we have seen that they really cannot control it. I mean, hell, one of the hybrids that they had a control module on was able to fucking take it out. So it's like, yep, that's not working as much as you should. But one of the kids, a friend of May's, starts developing stuff, starts going a little bit cuckoo crazy, and, well, not cuckoo crazy, starts, like, being able to, like, jump around and do some shit. But then he starts getting, I wouldn't say sick, but in a more kind of deteriorated state, if that makes sense. Like, sick, it would be like he's pretty much dying, but no, he's cocooning, you know what I mean? He's changing. And we get that he pretty much tried to he took apart one of his fucking nurses to figure out what was with them, because he was doing stuff from the proto-molecules kind of shit. He was like connected with the thing on Venus, and now was like, keep this work going. And they start getting some more information about what's going on. Like, there's some work that the proto-molecule's doing, and it's supposed to be done soon. And this, we see the child start to transform more into the whole kind of hybrid kind of creatures that we see. And we also see that Admiral Negan has control of the hybrid missiles that would be able to deliver the hybrid soldiers on the Agatha King as well. That control was transferred to him during these kind of things. So they're pretty much trying to figure out what's going on, and that's kind of where they kind of link up with when everybody's trying to get in there. We see that the Rossi's able to set down, but things start to go south throughout the fleets. So there's pretty much got the information of what's going on with Aaron Wright, and Coach here pretty much confirms that he pretty much attempts to do a mutiny, but Admiral Negan shoots him and kills him, takes out pretty much the rest of his command crew before being severely injured, and is trying to get everything to go on. Because Souther pretty much put out a blast saying, everybody stand down, we ain't fucking doing this shit. However, Negan's like, fuck that, fight the Martians. And then, of course, other ones are like, I ain't doing that, and then he starts firing on his own ships. I'm like, you fucking idiot. Like, I can understand why a commander would try and do that to stop deserters or other people disobeying orders. But if it gets to the point where you're going to kill someone like that, why should I follow you? And then that's the situation that happens. People start firing and everything. The Martian captain of the ship that we had seen that had forwarded the message, like, any ship that needs assistance, we will be there, just as long as you're not firing on us or whatnot. Admiral Negan's like, screw this noise, and starts launching the hybrids as well. As we see that Holden and the rest of his group are able to get into their positions to try and get into the facility of Mao's. That, of course, is when things start shooting off. Of course, Alex is freaking out because he doesn't want those to get to Mars. He's trying to, like, shoot them off, but he's not able to do it. That's another kind of thing that we got for him. He had sent a message apologizing and everything, saying that he's good out here. He got one back from his wife being like, yeah, screw you. Granted, it's a little bit more in-depth than that. But he also gets one from his son who's like, yeah, Dad, I understand, and hopefully I'll be out there to help you someday. And that was kind of cool to see the different kind of takes, because the wife is understandably angry. Like, I don't fault her for being, like, essentially doing the equivalent of a polite fuck you. And the kid being like, okay, I don't know exactly what's going on with the situation, but I know that you're trying to do good things out there, and I want to help you someday. And it's cool to see Alex kind of go through that, but that's important to the situation, because he's like, I don't want my family to fucking die to these creatures. And the thing is, they're trying to figure out how to kind of stop these things. Of course, they go off to the Agatha King to try and stop the missiles and try and figure out kind of where they're at and where they're going. While Holden and the rest of them go through and try and get the kids and get everything that they can. So that pretty much consists of Bobby in her power armor, Prax, Amos, Holden. Yeah, those four? Seems about right. And, of course, we've got Alex and Naomi going over to the Agatha King to kind of deal with what's going on there. Let's see. Kotier is also there, and some of the missiles with the hybrids bang into their ship and start spreading protomolecule. Everything's freaking out. One of the UN soldier kills another one. Is like, what the fuck's going on? Accidentally wipes herself with it and is able to let Kotier out. He's trying to figure out what to kind of do when Naomi and Alex get in there and they see Admiral Negan. You're like, screw you guys. Ha! Fuck you Martians kind of shit. And, but it would take too much time to go through and kind of change everything with the missiles, but they're able to turn on all their transponders because Kotier is like, this thing is infected with protomolecules, so I'm going to set this reactor to pretty much blow up. Avastral, of course, wanted to get in contact with him and be like, stop doing that. And the thing is, it's like a one-way comm where he's just broadcasting like, stay the fuck away from this shit. And, of course, Alex and Naomi get out of there. She's able to get into contact with Fred Johnson to utilize the nukes that he's got to destroy the hybrids that are in flames. That's a good way to do it. And she, of course, was in the beginning trying to push them to go to Tycho Station, but everybody's like, we don't trust you. We don't trust Fred Johnson. And she, of course, had, and this was an important character moment because she wanted to contact Fred Johnson and she got all the consent from everybody. She's like, listen, I'm not doing that again. Character growth. Character moment where she recognizes she has done stuff kind of like on her own, and she was pretty much giving the proto-molecule to the belt so that way her son, wherever he is, could be protected. And the thing is, if it was just a crazy-ass crew that she was like with and didn't have the connections that she did, I don't think she would have felt as bad. But here she felt bad, and she changed up and was like, listen, I know you're pissed off, and I know a lot of you don't trust Fred Johnson, but we need to do this so that way more people don't get hurt. And they're like, yep, okay. So we also see everybody going through the whole Mao's experiment land as Strickland and Mao Strickland pretty much was the driving force of pretty much making these scientists and any kind of guards be like, they're going to kill everybody. So pretty much throwing them into the last stand kind of suicide mode where we'll fight to the death. And Amos and the rest of them are like, what the fuck? Of course, Holden is trying to figure out what's going on and to try and help stop out the launch of the missiles. The kid that started changing into the hybrid is led up as Strickland, and Bobby pretty much deals with him pretty much getting fucked up and being able to kill him. But the thing is, it was really kind of interesting because it didn't look like he was attempting to murder Bobby at first, trying to more like ascertain what the fuck she was. I mean, granted, it was in a kind of rougher manner, but still. So, she's dealing with that. Holden's like, I found someone that might, yeah. He's able to capture Mao and got all the data cores, like, tell me how to stop these missile things. That, of course, leads to Naomi's whole thing and be like, yeah, that's a better kind of thing. Amos and Prax are able to get to Strickland and the kids, and Strickland was pretty much going to use the kids as like a shield, like, we'll toss them out the airlock if shit goes down. Of course, Prax is able to get reunited with May, and she's like, why didn't you find me? It's like, your dad's been trying to do that all the time. And we get a really good character moment of Prax was going to shoot Strickland. But Amos couldn't let him do that. He's like, you're not that guy. You're not that guy. And has him walk out because he had the door closed and was going to kill Strickland. And then Amos closes the door and says, I am that guy, and shoots Strickland. Now, it's really kind of interesting because this parallels a lot of what Miller did with the scientist Dresden. However, I did not feel the kind of like frustration that I did with Miller because I understand that he knew that Dresden was making sense and that was the kind of scary part. Here, Strickland will utilize and do whatever he wants to achieve his goals. It wasn't purely about the work like Dresden was. He didn't have that kind of like empathy or even going even a step further, that kind of twisted nature that Strickland had. He just wanted to do the work. This dude will do anything he can to survive by sacrificing people, lying to his benefactor to achieve whatever goals he wants. This is a dude that would have been very problematic. I understand Amos going on that route and taking his ass out. Never mind the fact that the motherfucker is torturing children. Now, granted, you would also say that Mao has done these same things as well. However, he is the, like... Also, we have Mao in contention as well, who knows more about what's going on with the proto-molecule at this moment. So... And has all the data cores, so you're like... You could take him, and you might not take him, and I'm like, Amos, you do you. So, we got the kids, they get out, they pretty much get everything kind of wrapped up on that front. Aaron Wright is arrested, he of course is pissed off at, and I mean like, he just compared to whatever the last thing happens. And, of course, this starts to kind of wind things down. Of course, with Aaron Wright's and Mao's crimes coming to light, this then starts to kind of ease the tensions a little bit. Even saying that is being very fucking generous. But that kind of gets everything down. The hybrids are taken out of the board. Admiral Mugen's also taken out because of what goes on with the Agatha King and blowing up. Ava Sarala gets into the position of the secretary and pretty much promotes peace. And then we see that at the end of this arc, the proto-molecules thing at Venus comes out and does a squiddy kind of thing. It's like, the fuck is that? Because we had seen that Esteban was like trying to get his whole thing with the war and like Aaron Wright's justification was to get all of humanity on one page for whatever the fuck was going to come out of Venus. And to pretty much use any force necessary to do that. Astral is like, we have to do this as one. Let's do this as one and not do these crazy ass fucking things of like blowing each other to fucking Kingdom Come. When out of nowhere something can come and like take us all out while we're doing these stupid song and dance. So that's pretty much the end of Prax. He's reunited with his daughter. We get, even after this, that Amos believes him to be his best friend, and that's really kind of cool. And that Prax thinks of Amos as his best friend. It's like, that's really cool to just see them have clicked on that kind of level. And the thing is, sure, I would have liked to maybe see a little bit more of their interactions, but what they showed was enough to actually get those words to mean something. And they're like, yeah, I believe that. That's very rare for a show to accomplish. Because a lot of times it's like, oh, we're best friends. And I'm like, I don't believe it. Whereas on other things you can get, and you're like, okay, I get that. Like, the MCU has been able to kind of get that to a point where you're like, okay, I can see how these heroes are now friends, or how their frictions and everything work out. Because it's long form, and you're able to see the things to get to that point where you're like, yeah, I believe that. So the squid thing comes out and does its kind of thing. And it makes a ring. It's like, okay. Now, I'm not trying to knock this series or anything, but I really love the kind of parallels that I'm seeing with this and the Halo series. Not just because there's a ring, but at the end there's more than a couple of rings, but that kind of thing of an ancient civilization and all that kind of things that pop up with this. Because we get into here, and we are now in the second part. And it's really kind of weird because in the second part, we get introduced to this, like, slingshotting dude that is like, you know what, I'm going to put myself through that ring. And I'm like, damn it, if I was in his shoes, I'd pretty much try that too. He's pretty much doing it because this is like, we have time jumped like 187 days past. Earth and Mars are all cool. The Naboo has been taken over, and the Space Mormons are still kind of pissed about that. And all we know is that the Space Mormons are pissed about that. That's about it. I'm glad that they keep getting mentioned. It's not like mentioned all the time, but I'm like, yeah, that's a big fucking thing. And they pretty much renamed it the Behemoth, and Drummer is now captain of it and detailing it. So we got all these convoys from like the UN, Mars. We've also got the Rocinante Shugon, and we got this slingshotter dude tries to go through, and he's like, yeah, I'm doing it for this girl, and then he gets to the ring, and instead of going through, gets splatted. He's like immediately stopped, and I'm like, yep. It's like, and the effects for it, I'm like, I really love the physics in this, of how they do space. Like, I know these reviews, I'm going over like what is going on and why it's kind of interesting. But that's a really good thing because they do a lot of good effects in here because they don't seem chintzy, they don't seem fake. They feel real, and they help you get into the universe, like this ring that stops this dude. And with that momentum and velocity that he's going, he goes hard fucking stop and gets pretty much like squishy sound. Like, he's not vaporized. He gets turned into pretty much chunky goo. Or like the human equivalent of a sloppy Joe. I know I'm like delving into this, but it was like holy fucking shit, and it was pretty much broadcast to everybody out. Of course, this then starts to go into all of the different kind of inner factions because the OPA is trying to be taken in as a serious kind of nation state, and then here's this dude from the belt who fucking could have set this thing off to pretty much thunder destroy everything in the solar system if it went through the ring that way. Because it's some kind of alien tech that nobody's fucking fucked with before. It's like, huh, yeah, maybe not try and go through that at a high speed or anything as to take it as an attack or whatnot. As we learn later in the season, this thing takes attacks very fucking seriously. Granted, this is not one of them, but it's like, oh shit. And of course, that sets off tensions again because they're like, you son of a bitch. It's like, we didn't authorize this. He was just a dumbass. He was a dumb kid doing a dumb thing for a dumb reason. Yeah, I pretty much like, no matter, like, I understand why there would be these tensions, and it's understandable because they're like, you could have just used this kid for your own goals. And I'm like, why would we use a dumb fuck trying to get laid, doing a stupid fucking idiotic thing that pretty much most of the people in their solar system have fucking done before? Yeah. So, that raises tensions, but not as much as what starts to fucking go on. So, we set the scene. We have our belter kind of anchors of Drummer, and Naomi is not on the Rocinante anymore. She is pretty much chief engineer on the Behemoth with Drummer. And they have a kind of relationship going. I don't know how deep it is, because Drummer does say that she like loves her. And I don't mind that. It's kind of fuzzy what their relationship is, because they're definitely friends. And I could definitely see them being in a relationship and how kind of interesting and different that could be. But we see that Naomi is also concerned with the Rocinante's crew. And she's trying to deal with the OPA people because she's got people taking drugs and doing things, and she has to deal with that as it gets someone killed. And Drummer's pretty much getting ready to space this one, but of course Dahl sends someone to be her lieutenant in Ashford. And he's a really interesting character. I really liked his addition and how it helped kind of bring Drummer's kind of captaining to a forefront and actually really helped balance it out. Because Drummer isn't really used to this position or used to it in the kind of way that Ashford wants to be. Because he's an ex-pirate and he's got an OPA uniform. He's got Diogo as his little asshole. What I mean by that is, like, he's the dude that he would get to do other things, but he's not smart enough to know when to actually do certain things or when to check on certain things. Because there becomes a supply issue later on that he's supposed to be in charge of, but he has no idea what's going on with it. It's like, oh, people are stealing shit. Shouldn't you be in fucking charge of that, you little asshole? It's like, oh, shit. I understand his loyalty to the OPA and the cause and all that stuff is a big kind of proponent. You kind of need a certain amount of that. He is overboard and thinks that he's a hot, giant, flaming cock man and can do whatever he wants. And Ashford has to slap the shit out of him sometimes. And he doesn't literally beat the shit out of him, but he's like, the fuck, kid? So that he has to deal with. Bobby is, for some fucking reason, back in the Martian military, and as Gunny and everything like that, she sends message to like Alex and everything, saying about everything going on. She's going towards the ring as well. And the crew of the Rocinante has a kind of documentary crew detailing what's going on with them, because Mars sued them for taking the Rocinante, I guess, and they're paying their legal fees, and they're doing all these stuff, trying to force them to say all these things. Amos isn't, oh god, when they're trying to get more information out of Amos, and he's like, I don't shit where I eat, to both of them. It's fucking glorious. I'm like, yeah. I don't give a shit. And of course, the dude with the drone camera, him fucking doing shit, he's like, when the documentary lady is pretty much trying to push him I was like, oh yeah, you're from Baltimore. Did you get an apprenticeship or something? We heard like a dude with your similar name in Baltimore being like a mafia boss pisses him off. He breaks one of the drones. He's like, back the fuck off. So, oh shit. And they're trying to deal with everything going on, and they're just being insufferable. And it creates nice tension to see, like, Alex is trying to be his own kind of self and everything, and he's like, oh yeah, you're not really interested in me, you're interested more in him. Then we start to see that a little speck of proto-molecule is kind of important, because Holden then starts to see Miller, and this starts to detail a really important thing that I really kind of like here. Because you think Holden's going crazy, he starts scanning himself like 35 times almost to see if he's infected with the proto-molecule, because he thinks he's going nuts. And at first, when Miller is appearing to him, he's not really making any sense. He's talking about weird kind of like noir investigator kind of stuff. But every once in a while, he starts talking about other kind of things. It's like, this is the ring or something. To me. And it's not that I immediately go to that kind of thing. It just kind of makes sense with what you're seeing with the visual clues and all that. And I like it because it starts to introduce what I would characterize as, it is Miller, but it's like an AI version of Miller. Because the ring is trying to explain that, like, he is an investigator and he keeps getting shot out to try and find someone who can, like, do shit with this ring. Because there's purposes behind it. And, of course, him, Miller, and Holden are tools to this thing for whatever reason. And it's kind of Miller, but not. And that's why it's really kind of cool, because it brings Miller back into the fold in that he was killed. Well, he was kind of killed by the protomolecule, but he's then almost given back as a kind of flavoring as the protomolecule, trying to talk AI kind of wise to Holden, try and figure shit out. It's like, interesting. While that's going on, we see that Anna is one of the civilians with the UN fleet, to kind of see what's going on, because this would change their whole drastic kind of view of the universe and figure out what's going on with God. She's got her own little thing as one of the officers is really kind of afraid, and you can see it as body language, but Anna doesn't pick up on it because of her curiosity. She's like, wow, this is kind of cool. I kind of want to see how this kind of works out. And he kills himself, and she hits herself with that, and that's an important kind of thing, because she's supposed to offer comfort to these people, because that's her whole thing as a reverend, because we've also seen her wife and her daughter and what she does for, like, the clinic and everything. Her wife and daughter wanted her to come back home, but she's like, I kind of want to do this. And she really knocks herself very hard for this, and I like this because it shows that she made a choice to be wrapped up kind of in the important thing of going on with the ring, and she didn't see this thing, and she makes the choice to try and be better. This is important because we just see this other character, Melba, trying to do this kind of thing, setting off this bomb, murders this dude with kind of inhuman Hulk-like strength at one point. Like, okay, she's got something that kind of like makes her go that way. Stuffing him in a fucking like wall, and then comes on the ship, and we see that Anna kind of picks up that something's weird with her, and we also see this other socialite civilian chick who's able to blackmail higher up there to stay on the ship once shit starts going down, because she wants to see what's going on. And Melba is important because she is Clarissa Mao, one of the other daughters of course, Jules Pierre Mao, and she starts to kick off this whole series of events because she wants to avenge her father, who's in prison because of everything that Holden and the Rocinante did. So I fucking hated her for what she was doing, but I understood why she did it. I'm like, I understand wanting to do that, but the thing is, you could see that you're never going to be his favorite, because Julie was like him, and that bonded them together, and that's what they had. And you didn't really have that bond, and trying to create that bond by going on vengeance on, I don't know, blowing up one of the UN ships, well, blowing up one of the drives, and then making the documentary crew send you kind of stuff and disable the Rocinante's like communication and weapons, while sending out this whole thing that like James Holden was OPA, blowing this thing up and saying that, oh, we're doing this to set this off to fuck up tensions even more, to create another war. Jesus Christ, you... I understand wanting approval from your family and everything, but sometimes you just gotta say, fuck it, do stuff for yourself, and not create a goddamn interstellar war between 3 fucking factions. However, she does kind of redeem herself in the end. I'm like, thank you. Now, granted, not everybody needs redemption, and not everybody gets redemption with this. Diogo fucking donks himself, and he kind of fucking deserves it. Ashford kind of brings himself in, like, he kind of redeems himself with how he was working with Drummer, and then kind of, like, goes a little bit off the fucking reservation towards the end. But they then Drummer's pretty much put into the situation that the OPA has to fire on James Holden to pretty much make it be like, we do not sanction this shit, fuck that motherfucker. And, of course, this puts them into the effect of, okay, well, Miller was pretty much telling Holden to go into a room slow and check all the corners and everything. Pretty much insinuating that go through the ring slowly. He's like, Alex, we got missiles on our ass. Go through the ring, but go through as slowly as possible. And they're able to, and they're like, we should have been blown up, but they weren't. And the missile was going towards the center. So this sets off a chain of events of they are inside this kind of pocket dimension. And it kind of reminds me of a similar kind of thing of like a Dyson sphere. Where a Dyson sphere is a construct that houses a star. This, however, is a ring that houses kind of like a pocket dimension. And it's really kind of cool. The other people within the expedition were thinking, oh, this could potentially be a wormhole kind of thing, kind of gate. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of cool. But with how this has kind of worked out, it's still kind of that in the end because of there's more than one ring. So, Miller is like, listen, I need you to get to the center of the station, and then we'll kind of work out from there. So, fine, okay, cool. Because he gets to Miller, tries to figure out what's going on. They pretty much send the documentary crew out, because they're like, fuck you guys, because the only one that can like help us now and help us get out of this with our ship is Naomi, who, by the way, is pretty much like, Drummer, I need to go see him. So, alright, cool. Love you. Lets her go, normally. Because Naomi was going to sneak off. She's like, you really underestimated me, Naomi. Lets her off. Now, granted, the Behemoth would have needed their engineer for all the shit that was going to be going on. And, of course, Bobby is going after Holden because they need to arrest him for what's going on. Holden is having then conversations, because he's going in a vac suit, having conversations with Holden, which are really cool. And I know that it would be better to kind of do this on an episode-by-episode basis. It's better to kind of like condense this to get through. I will eventually get to episode-by-episode when I'm kind of caught up with it, which, by the way, will be like season 6, but he's talking about how Holden is like patron saint of lost causes, and just lean into it, man. You're trying to like go against your programming, and it's like, okay, now granted, it makes sense for the proto-molecule to talk about programming because of what it's kind of doing. It's not intentionally trying to kill people. It's essentially trying to build itself for what kind of things it needs. Whereas Holden's like, I'm doing free will, and starts to go a little bit faster. He's like, kid, fuck off with that shit. Now you're just being an asshole. But he's pretty much gets there before the Martians. All the rest of the ships are pretty much in the pocket dimension, trying to figure out what's going on. Melba is trying to get the Holden to kill him, and is pretty much getting ready to kill Tilly because Tilly recognized her, and Anna starts getting aware of what's going on as well. But Holden's able to get down, and he's like, listen, what do you want me to do? This is pretty much like all the doors are locked. I need you to kind of like open them up. So I need you to complete this circuit. And he's like, listen, I'm not going to do this. If you're Miller, tell me about it. And he's able to relay this information of like, when a kid is like falling, Angel will like meet it halfway and let him fall for like halfway before like bringing him out. And he thought he was going to be doing that for Julie, but Julie kind of like was the one that was doing that, and he kind of went all the way down. That's the kind of gist. And that, of course, sets Holden to be like, yeah, okay, cool. But at that point, Bobby and her dumbass lieutenant and the rest of her like coterie get in and pretty much are like, Holden, stop. They start to try and fire at him, but their bullets are stopped, and then the lieutenant, fuckface, sorry, if I was in an alien kind of construct, I wouldn't just fucking throw a grenade out of no goddamn where, because I wouldn't know how to fucking react. But he's like, stop what you're doing. Tries to toss a grenade at the dude, hits something, blows it up. Then the room's like, fuck you, man. Disassembles him and turns him into a fucking patch to the ground. That's a way to figure out shit. So the rest are like, ah! Holden does it and gets this vision of like everything that had happened with this ring. It's like, what the fuck? He's going kind of crazy. They're able to kind of get him out, but this sets off the rest of the ring's defense mechanism. Be like, everything stop! And like people get injured. Pretty much a lot of people get killed. Ashford and Drummer are in a cargo bay and get into a precarious position where Drummer decides to injure herself further to make sure that Ashford is able to be the captain that he needs to be, and make sure that the behemoth can be used. They're able to then fix stuff up. She kind of gets her leg kind of worked on a little bit, her spine, but she decides to kind of like make mecha legs for what's going on. Melba pretty much tries to get onto the Rocinante to kill the people. Well, kill Holden. But that is when Naomi is able to have gotten on the Rocinante as well. They kind of have a little tussle because she's kind of in a mech armor kind of thing and tries to kill her. But Anna had followed Clarissa, Melba, and tases her ass and gets everybody... everybody gets patched up on the Rocinante and taken over to the Behemoth. Because everybody needs kind of like gravity, so the Behemoth is able to start spinning up and create its own kind of gravity. That's important because if you're internally injured with like bleeding or whatnot, you can't drain it in space, so it's pretty much a death sentence. So they pretty much make themselves a base to go there, heal, set everything up. Of course, you've got OPA, UN, and Martians trying to like figure out what's going on. Melba then gets locked up. Well, Questra gets locked up. She has a chem thing to kind of stop her from going hulky. Holden is trying to explain what's going on. He's still kind of like discombobulated from it, but he explains that that thing was built to like destroy systems. Like it not built to destroy systems, but it was built for a specific purpose by this ancient civilization, because Miller talked about it, and it's got like all this kind of information in it, and there was something that was killing them, and this thing would like annihilate entire solar systems to stop this carterized wound. He tells this to Ashford, and Ashford pretty much thinks he's a crazy man, so he gets locked up next to Melba, and she's like, ooh, yeah, I could probably take his ass out if I could get out of here. Let's see. What else? So that's kind of going forward. They're trying to figure out what's going on, so they need to move. It would take them like 7 months to fucking get to the edge of the ring at the current like speed limit. So they're trying to figure out what to do with the station. And Holden's like, I'm fucked up, man, I'm fucked up. Of course, Naomi and the rest are able to get there and figure out what's going on. Anna starts trying to help and administer to people. Same with Amos and Alex. Naomi's able to get to Holden and figure out what's going on. And the thing is that one of the scientists from the UN decides to figure out, okay, we got to see what this thing can do. So they strap like some nukes or like a reactor and send it out and blow it up to kind of see what would happen. And of course the station's like, I don't like that fucking shit, and decides to start charging itself up. And they're like, oh god. Ashford's like, it's going to destroy the solar system because it perceives us as a threat. And then Holden's like, come on Miller. He's like, what? The view us as a threat? They view all the reactors as like bombs? Okay, cool. Let's figure out how to stop this shit. And he pretty much gets in contact with Naomi and Drummer. Drummer's, of course, walking around and kind of better because she's got mech legs, because Naomi helped her kind of make that out. And he's like, listen, we got to turn off all of the reactors to stop it from perceiving us as a threat. Ashford, on the other hand, has decided to use his laser to try and destroy the ring in their pocket dimension by using a communication laser and like amping it up. And of course, everybody's kind of like trying to do all these kind of things to get it to that level. And of course, they like bring in Melba, and Melba kind of like has figured out that James Holden isn't a horrendous motherfucker. And I was like, okay, he's dealing with shit because he saw the whole thing of him trying to figure out what's going on. But she's, of course, rated for engineering work and is trying to kind of help out with what's going on. And he's pretty much trying to use everybody to get this through. They're using all the power to amp it up. One of the people that he pretty much made an example of from his pirate days is like, stop, let's think this kind of through, and he shoots him. Now, granted, I don't like that he shot him because he needs all the workers that he can, because one of them got fucking toasted by one of the live wires. And I understand why he did it, because he thinks if this thing isn't stopped, all of humanity is going to be killed. So we see a race against time. The documentary crew pretty much helps them out and has Anna pretty much broadcasting this message of, I know everybody's scared, but we need to shut off all the reactors to make sure that we're not a threat to the station, so that way it doesn't perceive us as a threat. Of course, Bobby is then ordered with her other kind of asshole motherfuckers to stop them. Bobby tries to talk with Alex with everything going on. One of her dudes tries to pretty much take him as hostage. Amos is like, I ain't having that. Bobby beats the shit out of the one person. Amos kills the other one, and in this ensuing chaos, Bobby gets hit, but she's alright. She's good. They kind of like heal her out. But Holden, Naomi, and Drum are able to get and start winding down the Behemoth's reactor. They fucking are trying to escape from Diogo, and two other people who had ripped off the Martian armor, and he's being like, I'm pretty much Iron Man. And Naomi's like, I've got a fucking elevator, and fucking slams it into his fucking ass to protect Drummer. I know I'm kind of working through this kind of quickly, but that's kind of like how it kind of works out. And of course, they're able to get everything shut down. Holden pretty much gets up there and shut it down, leave it. Ashford pretty much tells them to get fire on him, but Melba helps out and gets shot. But everything goes down. Holden and Naomi are okay. All their ships go dark, and the station doesn't perceive them as a threat anymore. And then everything goes good, and all these other openings for the rings open up. All these other ones, like 1,300 habitable systems. Avasarala's talking about peace and everything like that, and how it's a new kind of gold rush, but of course the blood's going to go from that as well, because we've seen that kind of expansion thing before. And we see that Bobby is with them. Melba's doing okay and not an asshole. Amos got a kind of relationship with Anna because of what she's talking about, of like not burdening hate, because Amos is like, I would only regret not killing Ashford. He's like, you don't even know the dude. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to protect you no matter what. That was during the whole standoff thing. But we see that Miller is not going to be going away, and that Holden is talking with him and like, what do you want? He's like, I want to see what's out there. What killed my people? What killed these people? And just kind of explore. And they go through one of the rings, and we see it go down, and we see Holden see something going towards him. It's like, okay, that's cool. It ends at a nice, this like open-ended thing of like exploration with the whole thing. I'm like, holy shit. And seeing Holden kind of get himself back into that position of being like, I need to see why I'm here and why this stuff's going on. What is with this proto-molecule? I want to know. Miller wants to know. Let's see how this kind of goes. And I can't wait to see like where this goes in like season 4. So those are my opinions on this season. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.